So we're talking about our meant for more. We've talked a lot about production. We've talked a lot about the project. Like, what is the meant for more? We talked about identifying it. What breaks your heart? What's within your sphere of influence? How can you make a difference? What do you see? Is there potential or opportunity that you see that others don't? Those are ways to identify you're meant for more. And the thing that we made clear was when you get serious about making a difference in this world, you're going to purchase for yourselves a bunch of problems. And I've heard from some of you in the previous few weeks, you've started making these forward steps. You're trying to do something to make a difference. You are meant for more. May involve a problem to solve, a conflict to resolve. It may involve an opportunity to seize, and you have faced the problems. So here's the question. Nehemiah chapter 6 and verse 15, the wall is completed. What do you do when your meant for more is done? You're going to find there's going to be another meant for more. There's going to be another project. Or you're going to move on to another situation in life. You're going to graduate. You're going to change teams. You're going to get a new job. God's going to stir your heart for something else. Here's the question. How do I sustain healthy leadership over time? If you've been energized about meant for more, it's like, wow, this is really good for me to thinking about making a difference and how to identify and what do I do? You're thinking right. But that shouldn't stop when you complete whatever it is God stirred in your heart to do. There'll be more things to do. And here's a danger. It's one of the things I kind of feared a little bit about this series. I'm going to talk about, let's do this, get that meant for more. Louis, like step out, don't be afraid. But when I wrote it out, I want to make sure you get it. Life is more than your projects. You are more than your production. And all God's people should be saying, there's a subtle danger in our world that is all about production and measurements and metrics that can draw us in to make us think, well, if I'm not producing, I don't have value. And that's not true. Your life is more than your production. The fundamental thing about you is that you have been created in the image of God. God created you for the purpose of relationship with Him and others. He created you to make a difference in this world. Before our first parents ever fell into sin, He said, keep the garden. Make it more beautiful. Think about that. The Garden of Eden, and God entrusted us to make it better. You were intended to make a difference. You have a meant for more. God loves us. And even when we have chosen to cross lines, Pastor Austin so skillfully wove into the communion that's a time for forgiveness and confession and restoration. That's because Jesus Christ is the one who restored us. His meant for more, if we use that same kind of language, was to redeem lost humanity to Himself, dying on the cross for the sin of the world. That's awesomely big. And as a result of someone who has been redeemed, restored, God sets us on mission. And I want to make sure we don't think that our value lies in the mission itself. Our value lies in the relationship and the dignity with which we are created in the image of God. And you're more than your production, which is why I'm so thankful in Nehemiah chapter 6, where the focus changes. In fact, look at Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 15. 5 words summarize the first half of Nehemiah the writer's journal. So, the wall was finished. Really, like Nehemiah, this would be the accomplishment of a lifetime, and it's covered in his journal in 5 words. Now, we'll see in 2 weeks on the 20th, tremendous celebration. But those chapters that follow Nehemiah chapter 6 are filled not with production or projects, but with names. What we recognize is the thing that will outlive us is not necessarily the project or our meant for more. What will outlive us is the people in whom we invest. So, in answer to the question, how do I sustain healthy leadership over time? During the rest of November, we're going to answer it with these three things. We need faithful friends. That's today's topic. Spiritual renewal. That's next week. Our spiritual health needs to be strong because, listen, it is depleting to live in this world. The world is no friend to help us on to God. We need to be intentional about spiritual renewal. And then finish lines. The world just keeps spinning and spinning and spinning. At some point, we got to create some finish lines where we celebrate that. We'll see that on the 20th. So today, in the next few minutes we have together, and Isaiah, with this kind of husky voice I have, I feel like an 8th grader trying to talk to a pretty woman, and my voice keeps squeaking at the time. Vicki, will you go on a date with me? So as much as I try and really power through, because man, I love the stuff we're teaching, learning from God's Word, that I'm teaching from God's Word, I'm probably going to have a conversation with you that's a little more muted, and that's too bad because I'm so fired up about this first one. This is it. What do we need? 5, or how do I sustain healthy leadership over time? I need faithful friends. Let me introduce you very quickly, I'm aware of the time, to 5 friends of Nehemiah that you and I need in our lives too. 5 friends of Nehemiah that I need. Number 1 begins in chapter 7, verse 1. Okay, chapter 6 ends with, the wall was finished. Beautiful. What do you do next? Well, you got an entire life to live. You're going to have to sustain your leadership over time. Nehemiah would go on to serve 2 terms as governor. Probably more than any other Old Testament character of this era, Nehemiah shaped what Israel, God's people, would look like for the next 400 years until Jesus Christ himself appeared to provide redemption. He is a pivotal figure in Bible history. And that didn't just get done in the first 2 months, which is how long it took him to build the wall, 52 days. What happened next set his legacy, and it began with the friends he chose. Chapter 7, verse 1. When the wall had been built, project's done. What's next for his leadership? And I had set up the gatekeepers, the singers, the Levites, and appointed. So in other words, the wall's done. Now the military is set up, and there's a guard, and worship is now reestablished at the temple. Levites and singers, these are just people that led in worship. Now look at verse 2. And we're going to meet the first 2 friends that you and I need to have. They're 2 friends of Nehemiah. I gave my brother Hanani and Hananiah, the governor of the castle, charge over Jerusalem. Okay, these 2 guys, their name sounds just like. It'd be like having 2 friends, one named John, the other named Jonathan. Wow, that's tough. Hanani and Hananiah. Hanani is actually Nehemiah's brother. We met him in chapter 1, verses 2 and 3. He was the one actually who had traveled to Jerusalem and brought news back to Nehemiah in Persia. This place is a wreck, and the people are discouraged. That broke Nehemiah's heart and started the whole process of Nehemiah's meant for more being, I'm going to restore the city. It's now done. The walls are built. And he then goes back to his brother and says, hey, I want you to be the political leader, kind of like the chairman of the city council or maybe the mayor of Jerusalem. And then the other guy, Hananiah, the lengthier name, look at what he gave him charge of. If Hanani is pretty much a political side, Hanani is the cops. He's the security side. He's going to make sure that the city stays safe. In fact, that's the job he's given. Look at the end of verse 2, because here's how we meet these first 2 friends, what's true of them. He was a more faithful and God-fearing man than many. Let me give you the first 2 friends you need to have in life. Number 1, loyal. You're going to sustain leadership, you have to have a friend who is loyal, or friends who are loyal. Second, godly. Godly. He was a more faithful and God-fearing man than many. When Nehemiah looked around and said, in whom am I going to invest my time and effort? And Who is it that I can trust to carry on this meant for more of restoring Jerusalem? He looked for people who were loyal and godly. Do you have those friends in your life? We've looked in the past weeks at some of the problems Nehemiah had. And one of the major problems we looked at even last week was people were critical. They threatened Nehemiah. And you're taking seriously God's call to make a difference in this world, people are going to criticize you, or you're going to run into opposition or trouble. Who is steadfastly loyal to you? And who is so godly that their loyalty isn't blinded by your own failures? Had a conversation recently with a pastor who's going through a pretty tough time. At one point he's like, you're really leaning in a lot. Like, not a lot of pastors, like I feel sometimes like pastors just sort of abandon me during this season. And I said, well, first of all, I think this pleases Jesus. Secondly, I really think you'd be a win for our team. Third, I like you. And then I said, and just so we're clear, it's in that order. Like, I'm going to be loyal. I'm going to lean in. You have to have someone who believes in you in the moments when you don't believe in yourself. After a failure, what you need is not further accusation, but somebody who says, all right, now here's how we move forward. Who is that for you? Better be your spouse if you're married. Peel it back, and at the end of the day, you're going to have very few friends in life who you know they're for me. Be that friend. In fact, look at verse 3, the very specific thing. Because of the loyalty and the God-fearing, the godliness of these two men, Nehemiah gave them a very important task. And here he's really focusing on the police operation, so it's directed to Hananiah. I said to them, let not the gates of Jerusalem be opened until the sun is hot. And while they are still standing guard, let the guards shut and bar the doors. Appoint guards from among the inhabitants of Jerusalem, some to guard their posts and some in front of their own homes. What's he saying? This job's not done because the wall's built. We now need security. That brings me to the third thing you need in a friend, the third friend you need. You need a friend who is loyal and godly. You need a friend who is secure. Nehemiah said, hey, Hananiah, do this thing. Open the doors, not until the sun's up and hot. Maybe it's a 9 o'clock start. And make sure we shut the gates before it gets dark at night. And then have sentries post guard overnight. Some of them are going to have to guard right by the gates. Some are going to defend their own homes. Here's the problem. When you and I have insecure friends, it makes us insecure. You ever work for somebody who's insecure? If he's here, don't say it out loud. It's miserable. Control and self-doubt, criticism, assigning motives where they're not there. I'm just going to say it. You need to disengage from friendships like that. That's what you need to do. We need friends around us who are secure enough to recognize who they are in God, what God's called them to do, and they can lean into us and they'll tell us the truth. And that's not always yes, sir, or yes, ma'am. I love it. It's like, hey, Nehemiah says, open the gates at this time, close them at that time, get the police force up to speed. And they're like, on it. We just need those kinds of secure friends. They know who they are, they're good with who they are, and we can be at ease around them. Fourth, 5 friends of Nehemiah that I need: loyal, godly, secure. Fourth, mature. That's euphemism for old. Chapter 7, verse 5, starts with a sentence that grabbed my attention. Then God put into my heart. Like, I want to hear that. Nehemiah, God put into your heart to build the wall. What else did he put into your heart now that the wall's built? to assemble the nobles and the officials and the people to be enrolled by genealogy. And I found the book of the genealogy of those who came up at first, and I found written it, and he lists more than 70 names, the rest of this chapter. Chapter 7, verse 4 kind of gives us the hint. The city was wide and large, but the people within it were few. Walls built, nobody's living there. But listen, the strength of any city, any team, any company, any family, or any church is the people, not your project. And Nehemiah said, I know 80 years ago, this is what he's referencing, 80 years ago, they rebuilt the temple. And thousands of Jewish people came back to their homeland from being what they called the diaspora, from being sent all around the Middle East. What did they do? All right, I finished the wall. I need to repopulate Jerusalem. What happened 80 years ago? You ever ask what your grandparents did? You'll learn a ton. I love our small groups that are age diverse, the younger and the older. Not only do I stay sharp by staying around young people and I learn, but I hope I add value to them. The thing about being a grandparent, that's so fun. I just don't get so upset about stuff. It's okay. Not my kid. You'll be fine. Rub a little dirt on it. Man, just find some friends who are mature, some friends who are ahead of you, and you take the initiative and do not stop knocking on their door until they take some time with you. You need friends who are loyal, who are godly, who are secure in who they are, and they know who you are, and they're not trying to make you to be somebody else, and then they're mature. Now, fifth friend we need. 5 friends of Nehemiah that I need. Loyal, godly, secure, mature, invested. Invested. Look at the end of chapter 7, verse 70 through 73. Some of the heads of the fathers' houses gave to the work. The governor gave 10,000 derrick. A derrick was a fairly heavy gold coin. Verse 71, some of the heads of the fathers gave to the treasury, and they gave even more. And verse 72, the rest of the people gave, and so the priests and the Levites, the gatekeepers, the singers, some of the people, the temple servants, all of Israel lived in the towns. Nehemiah is meant for more. Build the wall and reestablish Jerusalem. And Nehemiah led the way with generosity. And then the leaders of that organization led the way. And then the people got on board. And who's investing in you? I'm not simply talking money. We're going to come to you for that, obviously, in the next 30 months with Meant for More. But I was at a conference, it's been a few years ago now, and saw at a break between 2 sessions, saw an older white-haired guy. I love guys like that. You know me, how shy I am, so I went up to him and said, hey, where are you from? He said, Florida. I said, okay, great. What are you doing here? Now, what I would have said if somebody asked that is, well, I'm learning from, this session. He just looked at me real intense and he said, I'm here for one reason. And he named one of the presenters, I'm here to make sure he succeeds. I pray for him. I support him. I travel with him. And I'm here to make sure that he does well. I said, will you come to my church? Who does that for you? You have to have somebody in your life that says, more than anything else, I want to see you succeed. By the way, parents, if you only said that to your kids about once a day, it's not enough. Especially after failure. And who are you investing in? I'm not sure how this works in life, but God has so ordered this universe that the more that I invest in others, the more return I get. Will you be that kind of an investor for others? Gotta have these kinds of friends. what I love so much about this whole idea of investing in the lives of others so that we're committed to their success is it so closely models what God has done for us. Jesus Christ lived, died, and rose again so that I'd be a part of his family, so that I could succeed in the best sense of that word. Let's be that for others, all right? Nichelle, why don't you come out here and lead us? I hear you playing, Ryan, Great is Thy Faithfulness, is that right? Wow, what a great song. Nichelle, can we stand together and sing that? And since I don't have the gifts you do, I'm going to get out of the way, and you lead us in that, all right?